Do you want to know something that nobody has ever dared to confess to you? You are trapped. Yes, you. Trapped in a prison you built yourself, brick by brick. Every choice made, shaped by the fear of what others might think. Every action you didn't take, paralyzed by the terror of failure. Every fake smile that suffocated the scream begging to break free. Do you feel that weight pressing on your chest? It's not anxiety. It's not stress. It's the crushing burden of living a life curated for the approval of an audience that never even bought a ticket. Here's the cruel irony. Nobody demanded this sacrifice from you. Nobody forced you to surrender your freedom, your essence, your authenticity. You did it willingly. You wrapped yourself in chains forged from others' expectations, trading your identity for fleeting applause, for temporary validation. And now, when you peer into your soul, what's left? What part of you is still genuine? And what part was molded by fear, insecurity, and the desperate need to belong? They sold you the illusion of control, that if you micromanaged every aspect of your life, perfection would follow. But do you want to hear the truth no one dares to speak? Absolute control is a mirage, a mental trap that keeps you busy, distracted, and disconnected from what truly matters. The more you grasp at control, the deeper you sink into anxiety, into a silent desperation, trapped in a life that never fully unfolds because you're forever preparing for a moment that never arrives. Have you ever asked yourself why the emptiness lingers despite seemingly having it all? It's because what you hold isn't truly yours. Your success, your relationships, even your thoughts are polluted by the constant fear of how they'll be perceived by others. The more you chase validation, the further you drift from your core, from that pure essence you once recognized but now barely remember. Michel de Montaigne, from his silent tower in the 16th century, saw clearly what you still refuse to face. Detachment isn't indifference. It's the only path to true freedom. He realized that our prisons aren't built from external chains, but from our obsessive need to control the uncontrollable. Our fixation on pleasing others, on fitting in, on evading criticism at any cost. But what if I told you that the very detachment you fear is the key to your liberation? What if just for a moment you dared to loosen your grip on that rope you're clinging to? That rope you believe is your salvation, but that's slowly suffocating you? Here's the paradox. The harder you cling to control, the less you truly have. The more you strive to please, the less authentic you become. And the more you resist change, the harder it strikes when it inevitably arrives. The world doesn't bend to your control, and it never will. Embracing this truth isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Life, in its chaotic unpredictability, requires something simple yet terrifying: surrender. Surrender your need for approval. Surrender your fear of failure. Surrender that false identity you've built to shield yourself from judgment. Imagine, just for a second, living without the weight of others' opinions. Who would you become without that suffocating fear? What would you dare to do if you knew no one would judge you? That version of yourself, the one living unchained, unapologetic, that's who you truly are. But here's the darker, deeper truth you've avoided. You're terrified of letting go because deep down you're unsure of what remains when the chains fall away. You fear that your identity has been so diluted, so entwined with the external, that letting go might leave you empty. But Montaigne's brutal and liberating truth echoes through the centuries. By shedding what you are not, you finally see what you are. Freedom lies just beyond the fear that paralyzes you. It doesn't live in self-help books, motivational mantras, or mystical secrets. It lives in the act of letting go. It's here, in this precise moment, waiting for you to find the courage to face your life and declare, I no longer need anyone's approval. I no longer need to control the unpredictable. I no longer need to pretend to be someone I am not. Now tell me, are you ready to let go? Or will you continue clinging to control, knowing that each passing day pulls you further from your true essence? This is just the beginning of a journey you may not want to take, but desperately need. And the decision is solely yours. Will you live trapped in a golden cage built by your own hands? Or will you embrace the risk of diving into the unknown, into a freedom that may terrify you, but ultimately makes you feel alive. Welcome to the philosophy of detachment, the pursuit of inner freedom that will shatter everything you thought you knew about yourself. The path is unsettling, but I assure you, the only thing more terrifying than moving toward that freedom is staying exactly where you are now. You have been led to believe that pursuing goals is the most important thing. But what if you discovered that most of those goals were never really yours? All your life, you've been climbing ladders that others built, never stopping to ask if you even wanted to reach the top. And now that you're so high up, what do you see? The dreamscape you long for, or just the distorted reflection of what someone else wanted you to become? We are obsessed with success, convinced that achieving certain goals will finally grant us peace. But have you ever questioned what success truly is? And more importantly, whose success are you chasing? Perhaps you've already achieved some of those goals that were supposed to make you happy. Studying the right thing, working where it's respectable, connecting with the right people. Yet something still feels missing. That uneasy truth that keeps you awake at night is the voice you've suppressed for too long. Your authentic self, demanding to be heard. Montaigne, in his voluntary confinement away from the world's noise, discovered something both revealing and dangerous. That true success looks nothing like what they sold you. It's not a social position, not a collection of possessions, not even external validation. True success, the one few dare to pursue, is living fully aligned with your own nature. But to do that, you have to know who you truly are. Beyond the mask, beyond the expectations, beyond the false persona you present daily. You've grown so accustomed to pretending that you no longer realize the immense effort it takes to maintain a facade that doesn't represent you. The mind is relentless. No matter how much you ignore it, something within you will always rebel. Something that, sooner or later, will shatter the illusion. Here's a harsh but liberating truth. As long as you keep hiding behind fabricated characters, you will never know true tranquility. Stress, anxiety, and that gnawing emptiness are simply the inevitable consequences of living a life designed for others. But here's the paradox, and Montaigne understood it well. Most people choose the comfort of a familiar, uncomfortable life over the risk of confronting the uncertainty of their true selves. They prefer to continue living half alive, accepting mere crumbs of happiness rather than daring to discover who they really are. And you, which path will you choose? Will you risk finding yourself or stay safely numb in routine? Because routine, as deceptive as it is, numbs your will and locks you in a repetitive loop, disguising itself as security. But that false sense of safety comes at a steep cost. The complete loss of your inner freedom. Real freedom isn't just doing what you want when you want. It's the courage to be true to yourself, even if it means breaking patterns, challenging expectations, and sometimes disappointing those you love most. You might wonder, what if by being authentic, I lose everything I've worked for? But here's another paradox. If you must pretend to keep what you have, then it was never truly yours. Genuine relationships, meaningful projects, and worthwhile achievements survive authenticity. In fact, only through authenticity will you see what genuinely matters and what was merely taking up space in your life. You have far less to lose than you imagine, and infinitely more to gain. But first, you must take the leap into the unknown, into a life that is not fully under your control, but is unmistakably yours. And once more, Montaigne's central idea echoes. Detachment does not mean abandoning what you love, but realizing that only through absolute freedom can you truly love and build with authenticity. Anything gained through anxiety and attachment ends up controlling you. Here's the message no one tells you. Most people live in fear of losing what they have because they've never allowed themselves to discover what would happen if they lost it. They cling desperately to relationships, jobs, prefabricated identities, and in doing so, they forget that real life begins right when you stop clinging to what doesn't represent you. So what are you going to do now? Will you continue living by inertia, afraid to discover who you are? Or will you finally have enough courage to let go of the known and launch yourself into the uncertainty that terrifies you, but holds the possibility of discovering something much more valuable? Who you really are, away from control, approval, and fear. This is the path Montana walked from his silent tower, and it is the same path that now lies before you. Will you dare to walk it, or will you settle for continuing to be a spectator of your own existence? The answer is yours alone. Following that line, we can explore how the act of storytelling is not only a vehicle for conveying knowledge or emotions, but also a deep mirror of our search for identity. When we narrate, whether consciously or unconsciously, we position ourselves in front of the reflection of what we are or what we long to be. The narrative then becomes a powerful tool for self-exploration, where each character or situation projects our deepest desires or our most hidden fears. We often forget that fiction is also a way of rehearsing life, a kind of emotional simulator in which we can live multiple destinies without taking real risks. Therefore, in times of collective uncertainty or crisis, like the times we live in, stories become even more relevant. They offer refuge and catharsis simultaneously. But beyond comfort, they also allow a boldness that we seldom dare to show in our everyday reality, inviting us to transgress imaginary limits and explore radically different perspectives. And here comes a fascinating point. How much do the stories we tell ourselves influence our daily decisions? Perhaps the narrative we cultivate internally determines how we interpret external reality, filtering our experiences and invisibly but constantly shaping the course of our lives. Thus, the power of storytelling is not only social or cultural, but intimately personal, capable of transforming our present and future from the words we choose to tell ourselves who we are. This leads us to an even more provocative question. What if changing the story we tell ourselves internally was a way to rewrite our destiny? It's not far-fetched to think that many people live trapped in inherited narratives that don't entirely belong to them. Stories of failure, limitations, imposed roles, and yet accept them as unmovable truths. In this sense, reclaiming one's own narrative can be a profoundly revolutionary act, rewriting ourselves not just as victims, but as protagonists with agency, capable of reigniting the past and projecting different futures. Moreover, there is an intriguing phenomenon. The stories we tell not only affect how we act, but also how others perceive us. A well-articulated narrative about who we believe we are can become a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, influencing our relationships, our opportunities, and the way the world responds to us, as if the internal narrative were a silent script that we all unknowingly help to perform. Thus, consciously building our personal story is not just a matter of introspection, but also a life strategy. On the other hand, we must consider the role of contradiction within the personal narrative. We are not linear beings, nor should our stories be. Embracing that, a rich narrative includes dark zones, changes of course, contradictions, and ambiguities, is embracing the human in its entirety. Indeed, the best stories are not those where everything fits perfectly, but those that leave us with open questions, moments of discomfort, and flashes of truth among the confusion. It is in that imperfection where the beauty of the narrated, and therefore of life itself, lies. And perhaps the most poetic of all this is that we never stop rewriting ourselves. Every conversation, every encounter, even every silence adds a line to the narrative. We are perpetual writers of an unfinished text, sometimes conscious, sometimes not, that every decision, no matter how small, is sculpting a new version of our story. And if you've read this far, you may have already realized something powerful. We are not secondary characters in a story written by others. We are authors in the midst of a creative process. And the fascinating thing is that there are no final drafts. Every day can be a new page. Yes, but also a page that rewrites the previous ones. What yesterday seemed like a sad chapter today can be read as the turning point before rebirth. And that, perhaps, is the great alchemy of the human narrative, turning scars into symbols, mistakes into plot twists, silences into suspense. But beware, because here comes the final twist. What if the true art of living was not knowing exactly what story we are telling? Because in uncertainty, there is also beauty. In not knowing whether you are in a comedy, a tragedy, or an epic, there is an almost magical freedom. Sometimes the most powerful stories are not those that close with a big applause, but those that leave you wanting to keep writing, because it's not over yet. And now we have come to the end. Although you know that endings are also disguised beginnings. If any of this resonated with you, subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the next chapter.